ننتظر هذه اللحظات وهذا اليوم بفارغ الصبر ومن زمان من 20 سنة. الواحد انه يحكي شيء انه انا حضنت مجد، حضنت روح مجد.
ولا يهمك، خلص الدموع.
بفتخر في امهم اللي قدرت انها تربيهم احسن تربيه وتخليهم منتصر وزين.
هذه اللحظات وهذا اليوم بفارغ الصبر ومن زمان من 20 سنة.
الواحد انه يحكي يصير انه انا حضنت مجد، حضنت روح مجد.
ولا يهمك، خلص الدموع.
بفتخر في امهم اللي قدرت انها تربيهم احسن تربيه وتخليهم منتصر وزين.
نقدر هذه اللحظات وهذا اليوم بفارغ.
Good evening, everyone from the land of Palestine, and good morning to our people in the United States. We welcome you all, and we welcome you. And we would like to commend at the outset those who are always in our hearts and our minds, the martyrs of Palestine, martyrs of the war, and the martyrs of Nakba and liberation since 1948 till today. Today, my brothers and sisters, we have a distinguished gathering because of our distinguished panelists we have. We have three panelists from the land of Palestine. They will give us an idea what's going on in Palestine, our dearly Palestine. We have Majd Barbar from Jerusalem, who was kidnapped from his work from many years ago, and he spent 20 years in jail, deprived from his family. And his son Muntasir at that time was only 1.5 years old, and Zaina was just born 15 years old, days old. And we have Leena Khattab. She is also Palestinian, and she's active in the popular dancing troupe, and also she also was detained in the Zionist entity system. Leena is a sister of Ata Khattab, where we organized a campaign to release him. In addition, we have also our panelist Dalia Nassar. She is a member of the Union of Palestinian Women's Committee, and also she's working on defending Khitam Zafin. And the U.S. Palestinian Community Network was established in 2006 as a formal entity, yet it was not new to our community when it comes to our student work and women's work inside the United States, as we have our roots since the 70s and 80s. The Palestinian Community Network is supporting and advocating boycott campaigns against the Zionist entity, and in addition, supporting the cause of justice. We are based on principles that no two Palestinians could, argue, which is the right, unconditional right to return and self-determination, and to put an end to the Zionist occupation to the Palestinian lands and the Arab lands. These are the principles that are under the umbrella of the community, the Palestinian Community Network, and we work on awareness with our new generations who are the one who are leading the Palestinian network. And this is actually a source of our pride that our sons and daughters now are conducting awareness campaigns and supporting visits to Palestine, and to support our normal situation and position actually towards as well to the movement of African Americans or the Black Lives Matter in the United States, and supporting the immigrants. We find ourselves, of course, to be in the same camp to fight discrimination and racial discrimination, as we do that fighting on the land of Palestine. This is in brief what we are doing, and we are very proud to have our visitors today, and to on the day of commemorating the day of Nakba. And we will talk about the Palestinian detainees, and of course that is still an important issue, as we are convinced, I'm sorry, that the Palestinian issue is a daily issue. It's not related to any day. So the sons of and daughters of our people are in the jails and prisons, but yet what we are watching today and witnessing today is a national epic on the land of Palestine, where the efforts of people in Haifa and Led and Akka and Beit Lahem and Jerusalem and Gaza now that are struggling forcefully to defend their children and families, they are all united. So allow me to start this dialogue. It's not really like academic seminar. We are heading towards a brotherly and sisterly dialogue to know exactly what is going right now in Palestine. So allow me to start this dialogue with Dalia, and to hear from her, how is the situation now, Dalia, in Palestine, and the developments, the latest developments in the last 2 weeks at least. At the outside, thank you so much for this invitation. I'm thrilled to be with you today. In terms of the current status in Palestine, I can brief it in a few sentences. The Nakba actually is continuing, and the struggle is still continued by the Palestinian people from Jalil to in all parts of Palestine. And in the recent weeks, the developments started, especially in Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood in Jerusalem, where attempts of forced migration towards Palestinian families using unfair racial discrimination by the judicial system of Israel, where they've been trying to evacuate Palestinian families. Hence, those families and our youth in Jerusalem went to Sheikh Jarrah to protest this evacuation and to stop the continuous aggression. And there's a continuous follow-up when you look into the family of Miss Mona al-Kurd. This is one of the families that will be evacuated. And Muhammad al-Kurd, her brother, is now in the United States. So you can follow up on the developments and by following the activities of those young members. And at the same time, and during Ramadan, all the Palestinians, they were trying to pray in Al-Aqsa Mosque. As you know, this is part of the rituals of Ramadan and celebrating Eid. And you know what happened there, and the fierce attack on the Aqsa, and hence we witnessed an escalation based on that. So the Palestinian movements, the youth of Palestine started protesting accordingly in different places. So what we are witnessing here in the West Bank and the occupied territories and in Jerusalem, that we see a unified Palestinian people against the racial occupation and the totalitarian regime there. Thank you, Dalia. And Leena, what is going on right now in Palestine, and what are you witnessing on daily basis, especially towards the youth there? At the outset, I would like to thank you all for inviting me. This is not a sign of solidarity. No, not at all. This is we talk about the struggle of the Palestinian people. We would like the world to hear our voice, and Dalia may shed shed light on Sheikh Jarrah's problem. Yet this is a problem that is echoing in all parts of Palestine. The idea of to grab lands of Palestinians. Maybe Sheikh Jarrah became more vocal because of the media and focusing more on it. But I know thousands of Palestinian households in other parts are being threatened to be evacuated. This is all under the idea the settler, can or that could be not only settler can evacuate the house, but it could be under the military law or to use it for military purposes. And this is and as you mentioned, Manada, this is an epic, really. More than 150 martyrs in the Palestinian lands, and we may call it intifada in all parts of Palestine. And now, of course, Palestinian blood, we're witnessing Palestinian blood being shed and prisoners, but we stop talking about Palestinian 48 or Palestinian Gaza. No, we talk about one Palestine here. This is one of the major achievements that we came out of from this intifada, that we broke all the constraints that being imposed on us to control the Palestinians socially, economically, politically. Now we are breaking this by the hands of our children, women, and the youth and the seniors of Palestine. So this is a real epic against a racial and there is no, but on the other hand, there is no liberty without a price. Thank you so much, Leena. And now we would listen to Majd, son of Jerusalem, to tell us what is happening, especially among the people of Jerusalem, and that could also shed light on what's happening also in Palestine as a whole. At the outset, so of course we commend our martyrs, our injured people, and in the beginning I would like to say, on this day when we talk about the Nakba, we live a real epic as our Palestinian people confirm again and again they are steadfast against the occupation, boldly and with all courage. And in addition to that we are unifying our ranks as Palestinians against the Zionist enemy and the apartheid. As they try every day since the Nakba and until today to break our ranks and to divide us between the Arab 48 and being part of Jerusalem and the people of Jerusalem as a whole. And in addition to the diasporas and the refugees, all of those groups today are unified in one rank against this occupation. Their eyes are heading towards Jerusalem and what is happening in this city, because what is happening actually and how to talk about the Palestinian state of Palestine and our constants. This is our land, and we will not leave our land. And this land will always be an Arab Palestine land. Since 5,000 years, it's been like that. And this this Zionist entity that came as a Zionist movement and brought millions of Jews from all parts of the world and to pretend to be one people. This form cannot continue. This is a superficial form, and it's, because you have to talk about the indigenous people. They have their own culture, they have their own history and own story. They will not be uprooted from their lands. So we can see the victory as Palestinians, no matter what. And based on that, or accordingly, I would like to say today we are celebrating we are remembering the 37 years of Nakba. We stand in solidarity for our cause. This is a just cause, historically speaking, and we seeking also a solution to this issue, this problem, because we cannot accept having this occupation, grabbing lands as Leena mentioned. Sheikh Jarrah is a symbol here, is a symbolic issue. Yet Sheikh Jarrah is a small point in this mosaic of the Zionist occupation. Here the Zionists are trying to uprooting the Palestinians from their land and Judification of the lands. And they say this is the land of the Zionists thousands of years ago. This is, of course, a false statement. If I may ask you, then, do you think, and this is a question to the three panelists here, if you would like to answer, do you think that was this situation of case of Sheikh Jarrah was like the fire that just or the spark that led to this fire, and also what is the role of women here as well? If we may hear from you as well about the role of women here as well. I think after 73 years of Nakba and to suppress the Palestinian awareness, and especially in the occupied lands, we can witness that the Palestinians, wherever they are in the Palestinian land, they are tired of the Israeli discrimination against them. So yes, there was a high resentment among Palestinians, especially in Jerusalem, after several attempts to suffocate the people of Jerusalem by detentions, also killings as well, destroying houses, all these activities, because the Israeli discrimination pushed the Palestinians to feel frustrated at one point, and afterwards the need for an intifada. And in addition, there are ample attempts by Israel, and here especially by support from the United States, to also against also the backwardness forces in some of the Arab countries that try to divide the peoples of the region and to face a complete failure, no role for everyone, including the role of women. This is why the women start its inception to promote those kind of forces, backwardness forces, and to prohibit any kind of awareness, especially when it comes to the work of women. And yet our Palestinian women, since Nakba Day till today, have an important role when it comes to the Palestinian struggle. And today we see that in Sheikh Jarrah, many women, youth women activists in Murabatat in Jerusalem and the West Bank, where you see young women and their faces are there all the time. Yeah, thank you. Also, I would like to ask Leena here if you can shed some light on the Israelis targeting activists here. So why Israel will target a member of, somebody who, a member of a dancing troupe? Why? And how do you see also the future here? In regards to your first question, and as Dalia said, everything in life, our daily activities are ready for intifada. I mean, when we walk daily to our university colleges, we are facing the soldiers on the blockades. Everything in our life needs an intifada, because as we said, this is an enemy trying everything to occupy us. And they know that we are stubborn and we are strong, so they try their best, and as well as they did with some of the Arab countries. And we look into our heritage, we talk about history. They both are connected, and this what Israel is not being able to create in its entity, where they just brought some people to and gather them in one area, but they wouldn't be able to bring a unified heritage among them or history. So heritage is reading to the reality, about the resistance, sadness. This is it expressing every sides here as Palestinians, and our people try to read and to revive the heritage. So. So the heritage has to be progressed after Oslo Accord, and here are serious attempts by our youngsters to revive the heritage. So talk about a group of intellectuals of youth, and work on awareness among the rest of our youth, to not to be negatively impacted. And we talk about the Palestinians without any divisions or certain loyalties. No, we have to resist the occupants, and to increase the role of women and the youth in the community. So on the other hand, the occupation doesn't want to see this kind of impact, or even if it's a small positive impact. When we talk about art, as you know, it moves from one place to the other. We, through arts, we explain our feelings, our smiles, our sadness to the world. And so the Israeli are having a counter message here, that we are Berbers, we are divided. So this is not true. This is not true. My people is here with our culture and our history and our social status and cultural status and political status, and we have the ability to resist. This is a danger to Israel outside, and the outside and the media, that we present that by arts, and so it tries to fight our cultural organizations, as they are currently asking our cultural organizations in our lands to sign on a clause in order to get any funding, that it will be prohibited to support any Palestinian resistance. So it is it's a conditioned funding. That's what you're saying? Yes, yes, that's what I'm saying. That we will not support any Palestinian resistance in order for us to get any funding. We refuse that, and supporting our historical rights as Palestinians. Um, and to support the Palestinian people, and especially, and then also when you look into the cultural organizations, even their members were detained because why? Because they were able to convey the real picture of what's going on to the outside world. I would like now to, before I give the talk to Majd, I would like to talk to Dalia about the administrative detention in February. They detained Khitam, and she's a social activist. Why? Why? I mean, what is the charge here to put her under administrative detention? And maybe some of the audience will not understand what is administrative detention, and as well. And moving to Majd, we are thrilled to see you today, that you released after 20 years in detention. And we have our audience listening to us, and also we have simultaneous interpretation into English, and we welcome all of them. But for someone who doesn't follow up on the Palestinian issue on daily basis, we may think this is a Palestinian person who was prisoned for 20 years, but still talk about this cause. So, I mean, why the Palestinian prisoners? I mean, they may come out after the race and say, you know what, I paid my share in the cause, but why you continue the struggle even after you've been released, and continue the struggle after being released? Could you explain to us, our friends, this? Why? I mean, to answer this question, simply said, I can say we were raised under occupation. So in every detail of our lives, we lived under occupation in every form. So during our childhood, our schools were shut down. Why? To spread ignorance among the newer generations, and not to provide the necessary education for our communities. And by the way, I hear some fire shots close to my house right now. This is part of what we live on daily basis. This is actually form our awareness. When you enter a prison, you are now in direct face with whoever put you in the prison, those guards, and who are trying hard to empty you from any loyalness. So from 1880, from the lovers of Zionism, starting in Ukraine, and that is back in 1888, they had a plan to come to this land and to evacuate or to throw the indigenous people or the people of this land out, and today talk about how to unify Jerusalem. And unfortunately, what we see also about some of the Arab countries who ran towards normalization with Israel, and what Trump did, moving the US embassy to Jerusalem. All these factors increase the targeting towards Jerusalem. But I mean, this context started from the Nakba 73 years ago. And when a Palestinian goes into a prison and he's being targeted more and more, because they look at him now inside the prison that he is the head of the struggling movement. So they would like to break them and to break their will, and then they throw you out when you release, that you're just a shadow in your community. But what I'm hearing from you, Majd, that no, the contrast happens. Yes, because they say any cause had his or action has a reaction. So no, yes. So when we are in the prisons, we are determined to organize ourselves and towards our cause as well. And all humanitarian causes, when you look into the humanitarian history, that are similar, yet there is nothing I can say similar to this brutal Israeli occupation. Yet there was occupants in different countries, and we study those as prisoners, and we always try. If I may interrupt you, Majd, so after you've been released, after 20 years, how did you see the current situation? We would like to hear from you when you were released, and at one point you were detained again, or could you tell us exactly what happened with you here? Briefly, please. I would like to say that the occupants, I was detained in 2001 to celebrate what are called the eternity of our land. I was detained, interrogated, and they asked me to sign papers during the interrogation, and I was posed or faced, torture mentally and physically as well, and also Zeina brought my daughter to the detention center to pressure me and to try to impose on me their discourse, and that they did. So before I was released by 10 days, the Israelis came and visited me in the prison, and they said, if you although you're one of the Jerusalem citizen, and then you have to follow the Israeli law, we would like to also extend your prison time. And one of them told me, unfortunately, you have to follow the Israeli law because you live in Jerusalem, or you're a citizen of Jerusalem. So that shows you fascism, the fascism of them. When it's called about the occupants' intelligence, and especially what they did right now, as what they told me the time of my release. Thank you. Let me go back to Dalia and hear from her when you talk about also the administrative detention and to expand it. And secondly, you talked about to fight the awareness movement. So what do you mean by that? What about the new generation? Do they have a different awareness towards what's going on here? In the beginning, I would like to talk the detention here, what we call it, if we call it administrative detention or other detention. It started actually. It's a not new thing. It is represented the brutality of the occupants start from even when they raid our houses and to start to suppress the Palestinians. And so when you have the army coming at 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning. They, by design, come at this hour to terrorize the families and the children and to shackle your hands, blindfold the eyes. So and how would you feel and where you going to like that? And it is unlawful as well not to inform detainee where they're going. And this is what happened to Khatim Safin. And we have so many. Khatim is not the only one. There are 40 Palestinian prisoners, among them 16 mothers, and their children are missing those mothers. They are witnessing the Eids and the feasts and days without their mothers. Those 16 mothers, since Corona COVID started, did not have the right for a visit or to be communicated by their children or their families. We have 8 of them injured. They need medical support, and some of them have chronic medical status, like high blood pressure or being diabetic, and they're not getting the medical help they need. And when and why you talk about Khitam? I know Khitam from her work as the head of the Women Committee, Palestinian or the Union of the Palestinian Women's Committee, and she is the vice secretary of the international movement of women, and especially when it comes to Middle East and Palestine. So she is a face you see in many forums defending women rights and the rights of Palestinians when it comes to the rights to return and the rights and liberties of all peoples. And so Khitam is not seeking only the rights of women based on institutional or liberal principle, but progressive liberal. The woman has an equal role when it comes to women, to men, when it comes to social and other issues. That is the main role of detaining Khitam and other activists like her, where they are spreading the awareness how to liberate the communities and all peoples from any kind of occupation and imperialism. And the struggle of women is not separate from the national struggle. This is why they've been cracking down on women roles, because when we look into free people who honor the role of women, it would be difficult to dismantle this community. When I talk about she was actually detained twice. The first one was in 2017, and where she spent 4 months under what they call administrative detention. The administrative detention here, and actually there's several with other used against several Palestinians. It is issued by what we call the officer of the region. He has the power to issue this kind of verdict, and the military prosecution will come and say this is a secret dossier. Even the detainee himself or herself doesn't know what kind of charge they are facing. No, so the judge, on one hand, will be given some information under the pretext it's a secret information. And so the first detention of Khitam, the prosecution said Khitam has a social relationship with leaders in a prohibited political party. And so did they review this information? Did they interrogate? Did they investigate with her? Her lawyer said Khitam wasn't even investigated to have a voice towards those charges, nor her lawyer. This is what's happening when we talk about administrative detention with Khitam and other women and men as Palestinians, and in terms terms of her second detention, took place in November 2nd last year. And again, she was detained administratively for 4 months, and the judge said here, after the prosecution submitted their dossier as a secretive dossier, the judge said, I don't see anything in this dossier or file except social activities. So the judge said it, her work is only social work, yet she was detained, and he agreed on this detention for 4 months and to be renewed for another 4 months, this administrative detention. And this is a problem when we talk about the administrative detention. The occupation can renew the detention without giving any reason. So the officer in your prison or the detention center can say your detention has been renewed. I would, Majd, would you like to comment here? If I may, yes, when it comes to when we talk about the administrative detention, please, okay. Simply said, I would say the administrative detention is based on going back to the British time, their mandate, back to the British mandate, and to control the lives of Palestinians in arbitrary way that could last 2 years and 1 term. I mean, it starts with 6 months, so another 6 months, and third 6 months. And once he was released, the detainee could be detained again. So his whole life and his stability being, shaped like that as a way of deter, that they want to send a message that you are in our hands. Thank you, Majd, for this addition that is part of the British Mandate Law, and the occupation is using this tool as well. And we wish Ata all the best. He came to countries like the United States and participated in several festivals, and he trained the Debka dancers. Was he anticipating that he will be detained at one point? Could you tell us how he was detained? And secondly, would that impact on the youth in any way, that will hinder them from participating or joining, in the popular dance groups or troops? Leena is speaking. When it comes to Ata, he was threatened by the intelligence several times. They used to send him messages telling him that you will be detained, and he was summoned in the intelligence, and they said, there's no charges, but we will detain you, and threatened him as well. And after a few months, they showed up at 4 a.m. and they went to they exploded the door of our neighbors, and then they raided our house. So with a big number of soldiers, they're yelling, we don't know even what's going on. And so they told Ata, we don't want to take you, but they took his phone and all his personal stuff, and then they also after took him, and till now he was not released. This is a fearful experience. Anyone that they knock on the door, or they explode, or they blast the door of your house sometimes and walk into the house like that. They sometimes send special units, and you still you don't know what's going on. They even start beating you up. and they blasted the door and using dogs and asked the dogs to attack the family in the houses and the children. Actually, could you imagine the trauma that the kids will have because of this? And and what about the laws? I mean, if you raid a house, you have to inform the family and you have to inform them who you are and the reason why you are detaining a person. No, that isn't happening at all. They just attack and humiliate the people. And when it comes to Ata, he is now charged that he's been a cultural young activist. So, as I said earlier, so that is a charge that he's being a young cultural activist, that he is setting workshops and doing some volunteering work, social work. That happens in every country. You see a group of youngsters. Soata was detained because he decided to do the same thing that happens in every country to do it here. So that the idea is to how to terrorize us, even someone who has no work with politics, that they will also be under detention or to be detained. Even on the day they were detained, they told them, just we detained you just because you think about something called Palestine. And especially in Beer Zayt, in a short term, they detained more than 50 students inside Beer Zayt University, male and female, and they took them to a center or detention center that is famous for inhumane treatment. The prisons or the cells are under the grounds. So, and they interrogated with them as a military act, and so to terrorizing just to speak about Palestine, you will be detained. And that's the case with Ata, to terrorize everybody who is in the cultural domain, intellectual domain, to be active. As long as you're going to be active, you will be able to be. Oh, you may face detention. Anybody would like to comment on what Dalia or Majd or Leena talked about? We would like to hear also what is the role of our community as a Palestinian community here, and we are continue our campaign to release Khatima as well, and Khatim Safin, and also we have a Liberation Dignity campaign. We're supporting this campaign and supporting families in Gaza Strip in all fashions. So we are working on those campaigns. So what do you think? What can the Palestinian diaspora do at this point? And what could be successful? And if you have specific ideas, we would like to hear that from you. This is our duty, as we are proud of you. In addition, we may feel there's a shortage on our side here, that maybe we're not supporting you as much, but every Palestinian has a role, whether he or she is in Europe, North America, Canada, has a role in the battle of liberation here. So I would like to hear from you, what could Palestinians do on one hand, and what could the friends of Palestinians do to continue this campaign to support this national epic? Majd speaking, saying that, oh, when it comes to the role of our people and communities, Palestinian communities outside Palestine, to support us and our prisoners. I think the story is still absent. Um, the, there are 4 housing towers in the latest aggression in Gaza now. Till this second, we still bringing corpses and martyrs, families that are completely killed, and they were still bringing them from under the ruins of those towers. And so those stories and those that represent families, we have to tell the story to the person who lives outside Palestine, and they should know their pictures and what their were jobs and why they were targeted. This could give an idea and an image and credibility to the Palestinian Arab struggle. And secondly, you mentioned, and here I would like to salute you, to boycott Israeli commodities and goods. As long as the Israeli occupants don't see they paying price for their occupancy, being we calling on the boycotting the Israeli goods everywhere, as an apartheid in South Africa happened since 1994 to isolate this racist, discriminated entity has to be, and to expose their crimes in all forms and details as much as we can. When it comes to the prisoners, in fact, we have 2 groups. We don't talk. I mean, we don't shed light on them as they should, as they should. And as the Dalia Nila talked about the role of women, and Dalia specifically said currently there are 40 actually minor young ladies and women that are being detained. Who knows about that? We have to shed enough light on the role of women and the role of every woman and child who are in the prison, because they are suffering on their suffering, and based on our traditions and custom, how to deal with these situations when it comes to children. And there are attempts to uh, stop the children to how to the house, when they have there's some house arrests for the children, especially they may spend 2 or 3 years in a house arrest, and then they will be detained afterwards for 6 months, those children. So they feel their days and life has been wasted. We have to talk about this. In addition, it's very important to shed light on 65 prisoners spent more than 20 years. We know Nelson Mandela. Now the whole world knows about Nelson Mandela, and this is real, of course. And we knew about his story because he was seeking for liberty and rights for his people in his country. Yet, look, we have then now, according to that, 65 other Nelson Mandela. It is time now to shed light on them and their families and their sufferings and the long years of their lives they spend in the prison, and to discuss about the administrative detention in all its aspects, the legally and socially and politically, to see at the end of the day, this is an unlawful and illegal, and it's a violation to human rights, and it's considered to be a war crime. It is considered a war crime. So it is very important that we have to talk and focus light on all these issues. So when we talk about people in the United States or UK or in Europe, that the people there understand those issues, especially on the level of human rights. So it is important to shed light on that, and not to leave the Zionist media to control the public opinion when it comes to those issues. Dalia and Leena, would you like to comment on what Majd said right now when he talked about how the minors and women being treated as well? Dalia, when it comes to detain, and I would like to thank my colleague Majd when he talks about the house arrest. And I would like to draw your attention here when it comes to the house arrest of children in Jerusalem. It is targeting at the end of the day the family, not the child himself or herself. As once the decision has been made to house arrest a child, the father and the mother are then they also the guards on this child or the prison guards, and we when we work we and our union of the Palestinian Women's Committee, this is part of our work, how to mentally support those families and the mothers, especially in different parts. They didn't know how to deal with the children in these cases, and because the child now is in the house on the house arrest, and the mother feels she is the guard on her own child, and he will also leave school for a long time, for a year or even for 2 years, based on the charge or the sentence he or she received. That will be very difficult for him or her to continue their education, because many children, Palestinian children in Palestine and Jerusalem especially, end up to drop out education. And, and as well, and at the end, it is depriving of rights. And when you look into the essential rights, the medical care, privacy, they're not in the, you cannot see it in the prisons. When you see the cameras in the women prisoners, and for example, the cameras. So when you have a woman prisoner who is wearing hijab, she's very it's very difficult to move because there are cameras in every place in the prison. Even when she wants to go take a shower, as the showers are outside the cells, so she has to wear her hijab and clothes to go to another place, and according to a schedule that is put by the prison. So I'm talking about they're being deprived from simple daily rights as prisoners, and it's been going on for many, many years. But and then some, so since 1967, the Palestinian prisoners start strikes against all these unfair treatment in the prisons, and to seek their fair rights. As I said, even today they're deprived from even reading books. Khitam as well, in his first and second detention, Khitam is trying to teach history, geography for the women prisoners in detention, and she mentioned that there's not even a library there, and also by design ignoring medical care for women there, and women, for example, they will, even that will impact the women who are made. For example, one prisoner needs 7 operations because she was burned at one point. Other women, she taking simple medication for her medical status. So this is a medical negligence that has to be, so when we design a campaign, it has to focus on that. So the sick prisoners in prisons, whether men or women, and it's their right to have the medical care they deserve. And if I may give an opportunity to Leena to comment on what we heard so far, and then we open the door also for our audience to ask any questions as well. I remember when it's so vivid still what I see, the minors in the prison and I still dream of that. One, I believe, was 12, 14 years old, and and I saw a child. They couldn't find the right size of shackles to put the shackles in his hand because they were moving him to a court. And I asked him, "What? How old are you?" That he said, "I'm 10 years." So I was about to drive crazy. This is a crazy occupants. I mean, why? Why would they do that? I mean, children in a very cold weather, they stay for 24 hours in a certain place which considered to be refrigerators. So these are scenes in my mind that I always have it when it comes to children, how being treated. And this journey going to the courts, this is like a journey of death because it's a bus. It is divided into cells, small, very small cells, and you smell the sewage and full of insects and bugs. They bring also guards who curse us out as Arabs, and they put shackles in our hands and feet, and they put it in a way that it's so hurtful that we can even bleed because of how they put the shackles so tightly, and the trip may take 24 hours. And I remember I was with a prisoner, and just to show you the brutality of this guard unit, Tatatka, she was newly released from the hospital because she was shot with 7 bullets, and you can still she can still suffering from her injuries of the so the officer turned on the AC in December, and the weather outside is so cold, so this girl starts screaming because she started even bleeding, and we were all frozen because of that. So this is the brutality treatment, unimaginable in the prisons as well. And they also with the windows, they throw gas where the prisoners are, where the prisoners lost their conscious lost I mean they so if I'm gonna work on our story, not only numbers, big numbers, yes, we have our story, and it's very important to convey our story. And when we talk about solidarity, I see the social media is very important here. How we can reach out to different nationalities, people with different languages as well. So to reach out to different people with different languages to convey to them our messages. In addition, so when we form our campaigns, we have to stop that the United States will stand by us. They will not, or the AU will stand by us. They will not. They will not. So these are lessons learned. They are lessons learned because they are capitalist regimes. They look into their interests only. They will not. They're not interested in our historical rights or heritage rights. So I think so. When we look into United States groups and neighbors and how we can reach out to them to discuss and to tell them about our story. I believe the people, yes, yes, yes. So you mentioning that you have a message has to reach the people, not the regimes. Yes, yes, yes. Because the United States is being controlled by the Zionists. So if also, Leena, I would like to announce to our listeners and participants as well, if they have any question, Anybody who is participating today to send your question or to write your question in the chat while we are listening to the panelists. So please, whoever has a question from the listeners to send us, or who participants, send us a question in the chat room. So, okay. So suppress the awareness, Dalia, you mentioned that earlier, and also the role of the new generation that will continue this national epic that is taking place. I would like to tackle those. Do you see any change, re-awareness, or they would say the cause has been going on for so long, and the frustration is there, or do you see something is now changing in the way of thinking when it comes to the young generation? So regardless, whether we are here in Europe or in Palestine, as we fight Zionism, we have to fight frustration and resentment, and when it comes to the Palestinian issue. So what is happening on the land of Palestine could create new ranks, a new way of thinking. Did you notice that? And if the answer is yes, do you have examples for that? Who would like to? Shall I ask Leena to continue? Who would like to answer? Dalia, okay. Uh, I feel that Jerusalem is always a source of hope. Every year, some things happen in Jerusalem, and the young people of Jerusalem bring the hope to all Palestinians, as much as Israel tried the Judification of Jerusalem and to kill the Palestinian breath. No, it doesn't happen, and in the latest developments, I feel that every Palestinian now has a hope for liberation. I'm not talking necessarily about the political liberation. On Facebook, you can say, now I'm going back to Haifa. So there's hope. It's been missing for a long time among our youngsters, because the people of Jerusalem is always standing tall and against any attempts to turn them into Israeli, or to be under their thumb. And so they preserve their identity, and they struggle every day, and they're being killed and being beaten up every day, and to be raided, how homes be raided in Haifa and other places, especially in other parts, where the first time we witnessed Palestinians in Akka and Haifa, where Palestinians are coming out, and this way, this brought us a fresh air, and against any attempts to erase the Palestinian identity. And I can say today they are failed attempts. Netanyahu said that what is happening inside, and as a civil war, Netanyahu said, no, it's a war of identity, because he noticed that it is a war about identity. Thank you. And now we'll hear Leena. In regards to the current protests and the faces, that most of the faces are young faces as well, and in the colleges as well, and other places. Yes, sometimes I talk. Sometimes we feel frustrated. Yes, and I don't see this as something bad. At that point, we need to go back and see the lesson learned. So the frustration is not a negative thing necessarily, because as a human, it is normal to feel frustrated. And then also the Israelis are looking into the young movements, and especially here there are in Sabah 2 families they had like fights among them, and but in few days we witnessed the reconciliation among them. So that shows you that the feelings that gave us from also from the resistance in Gaza revived the hope in us as well, to feel the hope, support and promote what we refuse occupation. The idea of hope is a beautiful idea if we look at it as in the resistance aspect. So most of the people here, they understand and say this is an entity that we have to look at. And so what happened to the Palestinians in the current days, regardless, I cannot maybe compare to Intifada 1 and 2, but our youth, I would say the awareness is coming back, and at the same time, it is important that we have to pass the current leadership. So we are looking into the coming days. What will the street here will generate for us in the light of this hope? Leena, you are like answering in your, the questions we received, as we have a question from Magdi. I, requests. If I may talk about requests, said Dalia. I sorry for the to interrupt you, Munad. No, no, not at all. This is a dialogue here. Yes, it is important also. It's not a matter of solidarity, and because only because we have a belief, strong belief that Israel represents imperialism, and also um, suppressing peoples, and we see it actually in everywhere, even in the United States. Black Lives Matters, and in Latin America there are groups of people are being suppressed, and it is very important, especially in the United States. I salute you, Monadel, and all our friends in the US Palestinian Community Network, because I believe those campaigns are important to expose what the occupants are doing in like in Gaza. And we see also Zionist lobbyism working in the United States to stigma us as terrorists, and our media is not on the level that is required. So it is important, first of all, to announce the legitimacy, our right to resist not only the Palestinian people, but any people, and not to be stigmatized as terrorists, and to work on lobbying. The Israelis did a good job when it comes to lobbying, and we as Palestinians, we don't work as we should when it comes to lobbying in everywhere. Wherever you are, when you talk about the Palestinian issue, they have to be tackled, how to be dealt with. And I see and then the Americans need to know who they're paying their taxes to and where their money is going when they pay taxes, and the children are died in Gaza, died because of the tax, by the tax money, and they're being given to Israel. So they need to understand the support they're being giving to Israel. So, and then we talk about campaign social media like hashtag and Safe Jarrah and other campaigns. I call on all of my listeners today and participants to use the hashtag and to talk and tackle about all these issues. And thank you. Thank you. And now we are receiving questions from the listeners and audience. And yeah, so since we have so many questions, I will ask the panelists to try to briefly answer the questions so we can answer as many questions as possible. Where is what happening in Palestine leading us to? That is the first question. Secondly, do you think that what's happening in Palestine will uh, uh, has any thing related to normalization that we witnessed with some of the Arab countries? So we have two questions. Again, the first question, where is this intifada taking us, or this epic that we are witnessing today? Two, secondly, will that impact what in terms of the awareness campaign when it comes to the normalization process with some Arab countries? I must say we cannot depend on the Arab regimes or official Arab regimes or the ones who normalize their relationships. We always depend on the peoples because as more the awareness rate is higher, they can exert pressure on their own regimes. This is when it comes to our Arab regimes. So every time I look at our media and see whether UAE could review its position. No, unfortunately, on the social media, they are supporting the Zionist discourse. And I'm surprised to how deep the normalization became with the UAE. So based on that, I say again, we have to depend on our peoples. That is very important, indeed, indeed. Yes, yes. So we have to focus on the peoples, not the regimes. Yes, and and we 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 would like to be careful because till now, and as the history taught us, when there's an intifada in a people, there's no historian or a politician could tell what is exactly the minute that end to this burst. And we as Palestinian people, maybe and I may disagree a little bit with Leena that we didn't witness any frustration at all. At the end of the day, the Palestinian Arab people proved that they express their rejection to occupation, although all the ample pressures we witnessed through 100 years, not only the years of occupation. So so I would say I have a different opinion when it comes to frustration here. But maybe when we talk about our people start losing their trust in their leadership, this is something we have to, and we can see that even on the social media outlets as well. And today, I would say our young people, if they have a long breath, and what we're witnessing, it's going to transform into intifada. It could create a real change on the ground, whether in Palestine or in the international or the world public opinion, to be an open door, or open the door for the Palestinian issue. I would say that everything you mentioned, uh, we see protests in all streets of the United States and the major cities today to commemorate a Nakba. And so this is what we're going to say. And it's very important to hear you out and to tell the people that we had these discussions with our people back in Palestine. So we hold it dearly. And the issues we are important to us and to our listeners. And here there's a question about uh, arts and artists being targeted like Ata and to targeting women organizations like Khitam, who's working in one of those organizations. What did you do to protect those kind of organizations that not continue to be targeted? What do you do in terms of maybe shedding light on the members when it comes to women organizations or arts supporting organizations? Secondly, what can we do to support you and to support your organizations in Palestine? These are very two important questions. I would like to ask Dalia and Leena, and after that, there's a question for Majd when it comes to the prisons or how the prisons being managed. So let's hear Dalia first. When it comes to our convictions and we believe as members, we believe that we are free as long as we believe in our convictions. And Khitam is not the first detainee or being arrested. My mother also, she was a member of this women committee and she was detained. So our union is not based on persons, you know. So of course the persons are important, and we miss Khitam deeply. But she cultivated in us certain convictions as a union, national union for women, so that the convictions are continue regardless, and our work will continue regardless. And so we also spread the word by campaigns because we are facing a brutal occupation. I have no belief in the European Union, for example, they would move, for example, to stand by our liberations. Why didn't do that 20 years ago, for example? And especially that they said that Jerusalem is not the capital of Israel. They should have refused also the transfer of the US embassy to the middle of Jerusalem. So the AU had a chance to do or to show activity. So we don't ask from the AU to do something that, but we ask the peoples, they pressure their regimes and governments to refuse and to boycott Israel. And you earlier spoke about the normalization. We never expected anything from Saudi Arabia or United Arab Emirates because it is clear where the regimes in those countries, but we expect that peoples will raise up to change their governments or regimes, and that will impact Khitam and others, and what is happening in Sheikh Jarrah and other issues we are witnessing. That is, frankly speaking, that is the situation. Leena, would you like to add here at the outset? I didn't hear you, Munadil. When it comes to protecting organization institutions and their members and their stability, when it comes to art and from generation to the other, I'll see this is a continuous journey. Ata is not the only one who's been arrested. We have two members, two artists, actually three artists who have been detained, and sometimes 20 members at one time were artists were detained. This is an ongoing thing, and Ata was creating a campaign, and unfortunately also on the other hand the funding of this dance troupe or the troupe stopped, but we were presenting the Kanani people and the story of our people through art, and we had four full-time employees, in terms of the different art projects. All this stopped, unfortunately, right now. So we start a fundraising campaign, and I hope that I hope that we spread the word here through you and as well, and that we continue providing our arts. We getting close to the end of the session, so the final question and is the administration of prisons imposing on prisoners productive works to support the Zionist entity or not? It was, yes, in the 70s, but because of our prisoners movement stopped this kind of slavery as they were working to serve the army and what the and in terms of what the army needs in terms of tools and etc. But and we have 4 prisoners this year. Kamal, one of them, his name is Kamal, to shed light on the suffering of the sick prisoners. We have tens of sick prisoners who are serious sickness like cancer or chronic situation. They don't receive any medical care, and they're just being procrastinated, and so they don't receive any medical care. That is very important to shed light on that, especially that is considered to be at the end of the day violations of human rights. Violation of human rights. This is what we can call a slow killing to the prisoners. Yes, there is a prisoner who has been had cancer, and he suffered until he lost his life as a martyr because of the cancer. We are delighted to have this dialogue, and we will continue to continue this kind of meetings. And at the end, I would like to tell you and to our people to continue on the attempts to support the strugglers and the people who are suffering in the integrity liberation campaign, and we have it on our website. And they also to support the campaign in regards to release Ata and to release Khitam, to do our work with all our strength to fulfill our strategic and just and legitimate objectives that started by the Palestinian movement and on the Palestinian land and Arab land. We thank you all. At the end, I would quote one of the poets: as long as we have trees and olives, and it will always last, and my words will always be a bread and a weapon in the hands of the defenders of the revolution. And we will continue, hopefully we'll be in touch. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.